Today we are going to look at factoring polynomials, specifically looking at grouping. So the first question we're going to do is a bit of a review, working on common factors, finding something that's common between all of the terms. So we look at this first one. Remember, we're looking at, we can first look at our number and see if there's a common factor or number we can take out of both of these. So I know that 5 goes into 15 3 times. And 5 goes into 5 once. So we can take out a factor of 5. Okay. I'm then going to take a look at my x values and see if there's anything common between my x values. Notice I have an x squared and an x cubed. So since x squared is the smallest power between them, I know I can take out an x squared. I'm then going to take a look at the y value and see if there's a y common between them all. And I notice I have a y squared and a y cubed. Again, y squared, being the smallest power, is what I can take out of it. Now I'm going to look at how I can get from this term that I've taken out to my original term. What do I have to multiply this by to get to this one? So seeing as it's taken out my 5 and my x squared, but I am missing one power of y, so I'm going to have to multiply by y to get to this first term. Looking at the second one, I see that I have 5, so to get to 15 I have to multiply by 3, and I'm adding here. I'm missing one value of x, and it's gotten all of my y. So I've looked at both of these terms and taken out a value of 5x squared y squared, leaving me with y in the first term and 3x in the second term. So we're going to use this process when we're working with grouping, because the first thing we want to do is see if there's anything we can take out of all of our terms before we look at grouping and going any further. So if we take a look at our second example, I look at the numbers first and I see I have a 1. Remember, anything in front of the term is a 1, 2, minus 1, minus 2. So there's nothing common between 1s and 2s besides a factor of 1, but that's not really going to help us. So there's nothing common I can take out of these ones. So I'm going to go right on to grouping. So I'm going to, since it's 4 terms, I'm going to group the first 2 and the last 2 together and see if there's anything common I can take out of these. So looking at my first group, I have a 1 and a 2. Again, I can't take anything out there, but I have an x cubed and an x squared, meaning I can take a factor of x squared out. Okay, so what do I have left to get to my first term? I have 1x, one factor of x, and in here I have my 2, and it's used up my x squared. So I have x squared, bracket x plus 2. Okay. Looking at my second grouping, I notice, well, it's very similar to this x plus 2 bracket, and that would be awfully convenient if I could get it to be an x plus 2. So how can I go from negative x minus 2 to an x plus 2? Well, I could take out a factor of negative 1. So if I take out a factor of negative 1, I'm left with a positive x plus 2. Now, normally we wouldn't write a 1 in there, but I'm going to keep it there for our next step, just to help us visualize. Okay. So now I see that in my first grouping, I have an x plus 2, and in my second grouping, I also have an x plus 2, which means we can factor this even further by taking out a value of x plus 2 from both of them. So if I take the x plus 2 out of this first grouping, I'm left with my x squared. And if I take it out of this second grouping, I'm left with my minus 1. And now when I look at each grouping, I see there as far as I can go. I can't simplify or factor anything else out of those two groupings, so I'm done. Okay, let's try this again and kind of put these two together in our last example here. So remember, our first step is to see if there's anything common between all four terms or all of the terms in the math sentence that I can take out. So if I look at my numbers first, I have a 6, a 2, a -6, and a -2. Well, 2 can go into 6, so I'm going to take out a factor of 2. Now if I look at my letters, I have a squared, a, and then no a. So I can't take an a out of all of these because this last term doesn't have an a in it. Here I have a b squared, no b, and one b. So again, I can't take a b out of all of them because this one doesn't have a b in it. So I can just take out a factor of 2. So if I take out a factor of 2 here, I have 3, because 3 times 2 is 6. A squared plus b, because I haven't taken out any letters, plus, I've taken out the 2, so I just have an ab squared minus 3a minus b. Okay, so now I've taken out what's common, and I'm going to look at my 4 terms here. Again, I'm going to try and group them, the first 2 together and the last 2 together. So I have this 2. I'm going to use square brackets here because I know I'm going to have other brackets inside, and I like to change them up so I can visualize it a little bit better. So I'm going to use big square brackets. Looking at my first grouping, I have a 3 and a 1, so I can't take out a number. That's not going to help. But I have an a squared and an a, so I can take out a factor of a, and a b squared. So again, I can take out a factor of b. So in this first grouping, I'm left with 3a, because I've taken out one of the a's and a b, plus b, because I've taken out the a and one of the b's. And again, I'm looking at this second grouping and saying, well, that's pretty close to what I have here, 3a plus b, but it's different by negative. So I'm going to take out a factor of -1, which is neither the positive 3a and a positive b. Okay, so if I was to multiply this -1 back in, I would get a -3a minus b, which is what I originally had. And I see that again, I have a 3a plus b in this grouping and a 3a plus b in this grouping. So I can actually take that out. So I get 2. I don't need my square brackets anymore because I'm just going to have brackets on the inside. So I can just use my regular brackets. I get 3a plus b. When I take a 3a plus b out of this term, I'm left with ab. And when I take my 3a plus b out of this grouping, I'm left with my -1. And if I look at each set here, there's nothing I can do with the 2, 3a plus b, or ab minus 1 to make this any simpler, so that I know I factored it as far as I can.